reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party is of the view that notwithstanding the spin given by President Granger, claiming that his administration is not discriminating in favor of military officers by offering them a priori jobs or top positions, the fact of the matter is that his administration has embarked on a studied and conscious policy of discriminating in favor of ex-soldiers when it comes to finding persons to fill vacancies in the state and government structures. Granger may not be discriminating against his military colleagues, but he's definitely discriminating in favor of them. What makes the practice appear to be more commonplace is the fact that with the President himself, as well as his right-hand man, Joe Harmon, being both military men, they will no doubt look first to the Guyana Defense Force for persons with whom they will be more comfortable with to fit the bill. The incessant practice of finding either serving or ex-military officers rather than qualified civilians to practice statecraft will inevitably result in the creation of a command-type administration for the first time in our country's political history. The claim that there were already 10 officers in the employ of the previous PPPC administration is to be disingenuous, to say the least. What the President did not say was that at no time was there ever an outcry from the civilian population that the PPPC government was looking first to the military to find persons to fill key and critical posts either at government agencies and departments or to head commissions of inquiry, as if in pursuance of affirmative action in favor of military personnel. The President's claim that the military personnel he has employed are quote-unquote human beings and that they are quote-unquote skilled is unconvincing. Civilians are human beings too, and perhaps even more qualified to treat with civilian matters for which they have been professionally trained and qualified. And so the question remains, what is the basis for a final decision whether a soldier or civilian is best suited for the job? The answer lies in the adage, practice is the criterion of truth. Thus far, the soldier is more comfortable with the soldier to do the job. Thus, the perception is established that the person with a military background takes precedence over the civilian. In this regard, the perception is the reality. The Guyanese people will not be fooled by sophistry and semantics used by the Granger administration to defend what the public has come to recognize as another attempt to pull wool over the eyes by deceptive means. What the Granger administration is seeking to do is to get the Guyanese people to psychologically accept the placement of military personnel in key and critical posts in government agencies and departments so that this practice eventually becomes acceptable as the order of the day and an unquestionable practice. Guyanese must recognize that by its very nature, the military is not a democratic institution, and therefore, military personnel holding high office in state and government institutions are unlikely to adhere to democratic practices and principles usually guaranteed by a civilian administration. Guyanese must be alert to the dangers emerging from the command-type administration currently being created before their very eyes. Mr. Granger is on record as having praised the military for their role in the infamous 1973 elections, when the ballot boxes were hijacked by the military and when efforts to protect those boxes were cynically described as quote-unquote defense and quote-unquote protection of the set ballot boxes. In the circumstances, given the historical antecedents and current discriminatory practices, compounded by the ongoing witch hunting of PPPC leaders and supporters, the increasing economic marginalization and weakening of the productive forces, particularly in the agricultural sector, it is incumbent upon the broad masses of the Guyanese people, farmers, the business community, the progressive intellectuals and professionals, along with women, youth, to resist and oppose what is clearly a command-type military apparatus masquerading as a civilian administration in Guyana. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party denounces the APNU-AFC coalition administration for its second betrayal of Dr. Walter Rodney's legacy. This was demonstrated during the course and at the end of the debate on the motion calling on the government to adopt and implement the recommendations emanating from the report of the Commission of Inquiry. The sum total of the contributions from the government benches dealt a severe blow to the heroism and intellectual contribution of Dr. Walter Rodney, the Guyanese and Third World political thought and action. Totally wrapped up in their denial mode, the PNC and its AFC appendage assassinated Dr. Rodney for a second time. The APNU-AFC coalition administration has failed to recognize and to accept that the world knows it is the PNC that was found guilty of the assassination of Dr. Walter Rodney. The victory which the APNU-AFC claimed at the end of the lengthy parliamentary debate is nothing but Pyrrhic, meaningless, and reminiscent of the king in his new clothes. The PPP is proud to have once again played the role of standard bearer of the truth and upholder of the revolutionary legacy of Dr. Rodney. Speaking in the name of the progressive, democratic, and peace-loving forces in and out of Guyana, PPP members of Parliament demonstrated in no uncertain terms their ability to demolish the demagoguery, half-truths, and lies as regards the circumstances surrounding the assassination of Dr. Rodney and the PNC's efforts to cover up and embellish the facts surrounding their involvement in his death. The PPP will continue to expose the APNU and AFC's attempts to mislead and throw dust in the eyes of the Guyanese people as our party continues its struggle for upholding the dignity and the rights of the Guyanese people. Thank you. Any questions? No, first questions on the statement. If there are no questions on the statement, let's go off the statements.
Mr. Rohde, the following statements made by the opposition leader in New York, there was wide condemnation from the government, the APNU, AFC, deeming those statements to be citing racism and so forth. The president addressing Afro-Guyanese leaders yesterday morning would have made accusations that Afro-Guyanese were being marginalized under previous administration. And he also issued a call or spoke of the need for them to now benefit from whatever services are available through the government. Do you see those statements too, having identified the marginalization of a particular would you liken that to what Mr. Jagdi would have said in New York, and the whole notion of it being it bordering on inciting racism?
Well, there are two recent statements made by Mr. Granger that we're currently studying. One is the statement he made on the anniversary of the death of Mr. Burnham, and the second statement has to do with what you just referred to. We are studying those two statements with a view to providing subsequently in the near future or in the immediate future the party's response to those two statements that were made over the weekend by Mr. Granger. So we'll be coming out and issuing statements on those two matters. But obviously, from all indications from what we've read in respect to the last one, Mr. Granger, as the president of this country, seems to be speaking with a forked tongue. On the one hand, he's talking about Mr. Jagdeo should temper his language and not speak out in favor of people who have been marginalized, who are oppressed. The sugar workers are facing an uncertain future. That's a fact. And the majority of the sugar workers in this country belong to the PPP, belong to GAU, and are Indo-Guyanese origin. The majority, I'm not saying they're not Afro-Guyanese sugar workers, but even if they are, they're also facing an uncertain future. And that's why we're representing all sugar workers in respect to the uncertainty with respect to the future. And that also underpins the working class position of the PPP. So as far as we are concerned, the working people's interests and the working class interest takes precedence over everything else. The rice farmers in this country, the majority of whom are Indo-Guyanese, also are facing great uncertainty. Tremendous pressures are being exerted on the farmers, for example, where taxation and the removal of duty-free benefits on agricultural equipment is now going to put tremendous pressure on the farming community, which means that agricultural production prices will obviously increase. The point that we are making is the people in the productive sector, workers and their families in the productive sector, are coming under tremendous pressure. And this is not political propaganda. The rentals, the fees for lands leased by government is going to be increased significantly. All these are positions and, in fact, policy positions which the administration has adumbrated. So we're not going about manufacturing anything to make a case in respect to what the PPP is saying and what Mr. Jagdeo is saying. So we're studying those things very carefully with a view to responding to them. I assume that at some point in time, the opposition leader, who's the focal point in all of this, will, as is usual, have a press conference to deal with it as he sees fit and through his own eyes. But I want to say this, that when you attack Mr. Jagdeo, especially in those terms, it's an attack on the PPP. It's an attack on the PPP. Mr. Jagdeo cannot be separated from the PPP and vice versa. So when you attack Mr. Jagdeo on question of racism, you are claiming that the PPP as a political party is racist too. And in fact, Mr. Ramkaran, as I said at my last press conference, wrote one of his features in one of the newspapers where he claimed that the PPP is now being transformed by Mr. Jagdeo into a Hindu party. So we will deal with all these things subsequently as time goes on.
Mr. Louis Lonkan, HGP 19 News. Would you care to share specifically what aspect of the Borden speech made by President Granger you're studying? And can you give us a reaction to the parking meter, given that Minister Harmon recently said that the review was completed and the government made their pronouncement on it? And could you give us your take too on the constitution of the ERC, given the fact that such an important body is not functioning?
Well, we have argued time and again about this Ethnic Relations Commission, and the Ministry of Social Cohesion, or whoever it is in the office of the President / Ministry of the President, they're pamphleting on social cohesion, pretending that social cohesion is a replacement for ethnic relations. We do not accept that. The Ethnic Relations Commission is a constitutional body, and there's no way the pamphleting of the Social Cohesion Ministry could replace a constitutional body. So this is a matter that we are seriously concerned about, and the spokesperson on parliamentary matters, Ms. Gate Teixeira, I assume will be speaking later on that particular matter as well. But this would be our initial position, as we've already said on that subject. In respect of Mr. Granger's speech, on either of the both speeches, we're not going to extract any particular aspect or element of those two speeches. We're going to deal with them holistically, you see, and put them in context, both historical and contemporary, in respect to how we see those issues that were spoken about through the prism of the PPP. What was the third question, the second one?
Parking meter, given the review, the government spoke of the review.
Well, I don't, we are not going to say anything definitive on that as yet, because we're not very sure what is the, policy position of the government on this subject. We understand that it went to Mr. Bashir Williams' chambers, and it is now with the cabinet. They are yet to pronounce on it. The statements that we hear from time to time are rather inconclusive, fragmented, and as a result of that, we can't draw any specific conclusions. But our position remains the same, that the parking meters should be rejected by the motoring public in this country and by all Guyanese as another burden on their backs. There's no place in Guyana for parking meters, and it should be rejected. That's our position. Any other questions? If not, could you just step out and ask Mr. Coupin to come, please? I have invited Mr. Coupin, one of our councillors in the Georgetown City Council, to share this part of the press conference with me, because he has something which we believe would be useful for you to hear. Have a seat here, Mr. Coupin.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the media and all in attendance here. My name is Bishram Coupin, and I'm a councillor at the Mayor and Councillors of the City of Georgetown. I'm here today because I'm deeply troubled about what is going on at City Hall regarding the lack of accountability and transparency as it relates to the city's finances, with billions of dollars, taxpayers' money, being spent without any credible financial reports or audits performed for the money spent as required by the Municipal and District Councils Act, Chapter 2801, Section 177. I live in Georgetown, and I contested the local government elections because I wanted to help bring about improved services and facilities, better markets, efficient management of the city's affairs, and more importantly, transparency and accountability for taxpayers' money, because the city has been mired in accusations of corruption and mismanagement for decades now. I have consistently called for a forensic audit to be conducted of the City of Georgetown finances, and I'm not the only one who has been calling for this forensic audit. When any new council takes over, it should be presented with an audited financial statement of the council's finances from the Auditor General as soon as possible. Also, there's widespread perception that corruption is rampant at City Hall. This perception is fueled by the lack of accountability for hundreds of millions of dollars spent on projects with no public tendering, improper financial reporting, 4 hidden bank accounts which are not included in any financial reports to councilors, and financial deficits being reported on a consistent basis every month. I have attempted to move a motion for a forensic audit on 3 occasions by submitting a written request to the mayor and town clerk to have the motions included on the agenda for the statutory meetings. On each occasion, the town clerk has responded that he found fault with the motions but did not advise what those deficiencies were. It is my firm belief that my motion for a forensic audit is being deliberately blocked by the town clerk and others. The city of Georgetown is an independent sovereign, the city of Georgetown is not an independent sovereign state, and it is in the interest of all citizens and the central government to ensure that a forensic audit is conducted of the city's finances as soon as possible. And I will continue to press for these matters to be resolved at every statutory meeting. Thank you.
Questions?
You spoke of contracts being awarded without any public tender. You appear to maybe identify a few of those contracts. And are these contracts related to the current council, or are you talking about the previous council?
Well, whether they are related to the previous council or the current councilors have a right to see those contracts, and upon request, we have not seen any. Case in point for the cleanup of Georgetown, the move of the Stabroek vendors from the Stabroek Market area, we have not seen any reports of any expenditure relating to those. The ongoing work on Merriman's Mall, we have not seen any reports going forthcoming on that. So there are repairs going on right now for the Kitty Market, for the All By Stone Market, and we have not seen any financial reports on those either. At the statutory meetings, I've raised the issue. I'd also submitted an additional motion requesting for detailed listing of expenditures for each month, because since the new council took over, we have not received any detailed expenditures. The reports simply allude to a lump sum amount of money spent by the council and a certain percentage going to wages and salaries.
If I can ask, would this also include a parking meter contract? Were you privy to this?
No, I made requests as soon as we found out about the parking meter. We started asking questions about the meter. When was it signed? There were conflicting reports as to when exactly it was signed. And we were told that an amendment would be signed in June. But later we found out that apparently this contract was already signed. But I have resisted because the presentation made, the councilors had requested that the presentation be made by the company providing the service. And based on that presentation, he gave a small flyer, and that's how we figured out that it was $500 an hour. And that the town clerk was resisting any attempt to view the contract. They're claiming confidentiality within the contract, so you could not view it for us to get precisely what was in that contract. But as you know from the reports, the Ministry of Finance has recently analyzed the contract, and it said basically it's not good for Georgetown. In addition to that, I had stated that I've never seen a contract for that long of a period, tying the city and future councils for 49 years.
So if I can stop you here, you never saw the contract?
We never, attempts to see the contract has not been successful due to the confidentiality clause and the fact later on,
Even after it would have been signed?
even after it would have been signed. When we attempted additional moves to get the contract, it was stated that, well, it is now with the Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General for them to decide.
But on the there are some preliminary statements with regards to the review, um, including comments about it being heavy in concessions to the investor and being burdensome to
And
the-
exploitive, I think is the word they
to
use.
the people in Georgetown. As a councillor, what would be the next move now to get the town clerk or the city council to have that contract tabled at the level of the council? Secondly, we spoke of not being able to see expenditure, contracts, information relating to employees and so forth. What exactly has the council been discussing for the past, since they would have taken over? What are some of the documents you would have seen with regards to the operations of City Hall?
We have not seen any documents. Believe it or not, most of the issues had to do with the administration and the improper functioning of the administration. Reports have to be corrected all the time. There are omissions in those reports. Procedurally, there are a lot of things that seem to be wrong at City Hall, and that's why a forensic audit would not only look at the financial end, but look at the mechanisms in place and make recommendations for the improvement of services to the citizens of Georgetown. So the deputy mayor would have alluded to the fact also, and I think previously in the press, that we are unable to get anything done because of this blocking of moving on to the real projects, like improving the markets and so forth. It's only recently that after the vendors were moved, and I thought it was not the right thing to do at that point, that we are now looking at a policy statement, a policy document for vending as a whole in Georgetown. This is a process that has just started, so we're currently working on that.
With regards to the parking meter, now that the statements
I
are-
think the parking meter should be scrapped entirely, and it should be put to public tender. Because even though the administration is stating that this contract was signed previously, I am not sure that there are any actual records, whether minutes exist or an agenda exists, that this was actually brought to the full council. So I think a project of this magnitude should be scrapped and put out again for public tender. And I think, as the report from the Ministry of Finance stated, is very exploitive. Business owners and residents in the city will be paying the same amount of money that the regular person would be paying under that plan, the contract. And you would only get, based on what was reported, you would only get a small discount at night, which I think is not good for the city. Additional to that, the fees that they're charging, I think it was artificially, or it's being artificially depressed just to lure citizens to agree to it, because it will not make any sense to charge $50 an hour, or even $120 if they're investing $10 million. So I think the entire process should be scrapped, and they should start anew.
But scrapping the project at this point, won't it not have serious implications for City Hall? Because you've already entered into an agreement with a company, and there are legal challenges that can be brought against the council. Then there's the other aspect. If they go ahead with it, it means that people of Georgetown will be exploited. And there is also a likelihood that there could very well be a shift of economic activities from within Georgetown because people want to go out, they want to avoid paying, you know. The other question I have too is, have you had support from others within the council for some of these things that you're raising? Other councillors, are you getting their support? And my final question is, why now? Why now are you coming forward with this and not earlier?
Well, I have been out with this. The press that attends the meeting, the statutory meetings, would have noted on many occasions that I've been against this. This is not new. It has been covered in the Starbuck News, in Citizens Report, in Kaitor News, at least for one, and Chronicle, on some of these issues. And I was even on the editorial of Starbuck News, quoted by name, as one of these issues, the issues that we are having there, the problems we are having there. In terms of the support from councillors, we may want to pretend that it's not a political situation there, but it is. But there are councillors, there are a number of councillors who are in support of this contract being scrapped. But perhaps their position is being influenced by the political allegiance. But I think any reasonable thinking individual would see that the parking meter contract is not good for Georgetown. It's almost like a penalty coupled with the container fee of the 25,000, even though they've reduced it to 5,000, it's just an interim fee. But there are plans to increase it even above the 25,000 fee by amending the bylaws. So I think allowed to think on their own and to operate on their own, I think most of the councillors will vote against this, and any measures that the administration want to implement that is against the interests of the people of Georgetown.
But don't you agree that either way, the city is going to lose if they back out of the contract?
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm not so sure about backing out, because even though the Attorney General has stated that there was nothing illegal in the contract itself, we have to look at how that contract was signed. Was there public discussion? Was it actually put before the council? Was it signed by just a few people with information? So I think there are many unanswered questions there. So that would have to be looked at by those who are legal experts. But that is my personal opinion at this point as regards the implications of canceling that contract.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Miller.
Yes, sir.
You referred to forensic audits. Have you, in the process, identified any auditor, local or otherwise, who could, officiate in this exercise? Given the fact that during the period of the TPPC, we had the Burroughs report, and the Burroughs report was very comprehensive. So my question is, have you identified, whilst making the proposal, any auditors who you think would be appropriate to carry out this exercise?
Well, the law is very clear. Chapter 2801, the Municipal and District Councils Act, Section 177, stated the Auditor General has to make that determination. But the accounts must be audited each year. That is a requirement of the law, and it's not been audited. You probably would have read the former Auditor General, Anand Gulsaran, referred to audits that were conducted, or attempted audits that were attempted, I think in 2005, where just a statement was audited, and he alluded to the fact that there were so many issues that you could not have a proper audit.
All right, the other question is on solid waste disposal.
Yes.
Even before the local government elections, there was some furore over the question of Puran Brothers. I think you don't want to mention names, but one contractor hadn't been paid for such disposal. Are you in a position to throw any light on the current situation, given the importance it is to residents of Georgetown to have their solid waste management done in a proper way?
Well, one of the motions I'd submitted also, along with the forensic audit motion, was for disclosure of a full financial report and expenditures, because at each of the administrative statutory meeting, the reports that is presented, it is showing a deficit, meaning they have no money in the account. And up to this last pay period, workers of the council were not paid. So if they were not paid, I think they usually take first priority, then the contractors would not have been able to be paid.
You have an answer? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ronald Davies, is there any legal route the councillors can take to have the audited expenses and income of the city hall to be audited? And what is an update on the cleanup campaign?
Well, I'll deal with the last one first. The town clerk has reported, and the mayor, that due to the lack of funds, they are not able to undertake all of the projects, including most of the cleanup. And as money comes into the council, that is how they're addressing that issue based on a priority basis. In terms of the legal end of it, what options the councils have, remember, as I stated in my press release here, is that I get the impression sometimes from statements being made that the city is like an independent state, like it doesn't report to anyone. But the city is part of a government, a big government, and the Minister of Communities is actually the person responsible for local government. So from that end, I think pressure could be brought to the council to have this audit done. When the new government came into power, they had all these audits completed on the various ministry. We can say it's the natural thing to do if you want to have a clear picture of the financial and other status of the ministries and so forth. And I think the same ought to be done for the city council, because there is no transparency there. I'll give you an example of some of the ways there. Just a few months prior to moving the Starbuck Market vendors, the town clerk had installed some traffic lanes with pipes and chains and so forth. And just before the 50th anniversary, he had a bulldozer come and bulldoze the whole thing, take it all out of there, and that is complete waste of money. So I think actions are being taken that are not really thought out properly, and the financial end is not considered.
You spoke about 4 hidden bank accounts. Could you explain a little more on that, and how you became aware of those accounts, and their information as to where those accounts are being held and the amount of money that are there?
Okay. On the first statutory meeting that we had, I went through the entire report. It's a very thick report. And towards the end, they would have the financial statement, reconciliation. But the heading of it would be reconciliation of the main account. And right away, I wanted to know, well, are they secondary accounts? Are they more? And I posed that question to the council. After a number of attempts, the city treasurer explained, well, he didn't explain, he just blurted out that there were 4 additional accounts. And each subsequent meeting that we had, statutory meeting, I keep pushing for those additional accounts to be included in the reconciliation of the financial statement. All those accounts should be included in the financial statement.
You're not aware of how much monies are in those accounts?
No, we're not aware of how much is in there,
Or where the accounts are.
or where the accounts are.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.